I want to tell you a story that I heard from a veteran nurse. She's been on the job for 15 years and she thought she'd seen it all. She'd witnessed moments of pure joy, crushing sadness, and just about every weird human behavior you can possibly imagine. She told me, you get used to the rhythm of the chaos, a kind of predictable unpredictability, if you will. You know the protocols, your skills are second nature, and you even develop a sixth sense for when things are about to go south. And if you're in the healthcare profession, you know what that's like. But she said that nothing, and she meant nothing in her training or all her years on the floor prepared her for a patient named Eleanor. She was a sweet 80-year-old woman who looked this nurse calmly in the eyes and said 5 words that made the entire world grind to a halt. 1 second, the nurse is holding her chart, running through dementia protocols in her head, and the next, this woman drops a chilling confession at her feet. Her shift, which had started out so quiet, was about to take a turn she never saw coming. Eleanor, or Ellie as she insisted they call her, was in room 3B for what the chart calls a failure to thrive. It's a clinical, almost gentle way of saying an elderly person is just starting to fade. There's no single dramatic illness, just a slow dimming of the lights. She was a tiny woman with a wisp of white hair and hands gnarled by a life well lived. A life that was now almost confined to a hospital bed. Honestly, she was the unit's sweetheart. She never complained, always had a thank you dear, and she had a particular fondness for the lemon jello they served. That night was quiet. The usual hospital symphony, the beeps, the alarms, the intercom had faded to a low hum. All you could hear was the distant beep of a single monitor, the soft squeak of a colleague's shoes down the hall, and the gentle bubbling of an oxygen tank. The nurse was on her 10 o'clock rounds. The last check-in for the night. It was pure routine. Vitals, meds, and a quick check to make sure everyone was comfortable. She always saved Ellie for last. Her room felt like an oasis of calm. She slipped in. The only light came from the orange glow of a street lamp outside, casting a long shadow on the wall. Ellie was awake, just staring at the ceiling with her hands folded neatly on her chest. "Hey, Ellie," the nurse whispered. "Just me. How are you feeling tonight?" She turned her head slowly on the pillow. Her pale blue eyes found the nurse in the dark, and they were completely lucid. Clear, not foggy with confusion or medication. "I'm all right, dear," she said, her voice like dry, rustling leaves. "Just thinking." The nurse smiled and went about her work, checking Ellie's blood pressure, noting the steady rhythm of her monitor. Everything was stable. Everything was normal. She fluffed her pillow and slid her water cup a little closer so she could reach it. "There you go, Ellie. All set for the night," she said, patting her hand. It felt as fragile as a bird's wings. "Try and get some sleep." She turned to leave, her mind already shifting to the mountain of charting waiting for her. Now, that's when Ellie spoke again. Her voice wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a simple, factual statement, delivered with the same serene calm she used to ask for Jell-O. I think I killed someone. 5 words. The nurse's hands froze on the door frame. The hospital hum, the squeaking shoes, the distant beeps, it all just vanished. There was only a ringing silence in her ears and the heavy thud of her own heart. She turned back slowly, certain she had misheard her. Ellie was still just looking at her. Her expression hadn't changed. There wasn't any fear in her eyes, no agitation, just a placid, waiting stillness. "What did you say, Ellie?" the nurse asked, her voice barely a whisper. She repeated it, each word clear and deliberate. "I said I think I killed someone. A long time ago." The entire unit, her entire world, just froze. The nurse part of her brain immediately started flipping through a mental Rolodex of possibilities. Dementia-related delusion, maybe? Sundowning. A reaction to a new medication? Maybe a urinary tract infection, which can cause profound confusion in the elderly. It had to be one of those. But her gut, that sixth sense she'd honed in over 15 years, was screaming something else. The look in Ellie's eyes wasn't confusion. It was confession. The nurse quietly closed the door to the room, creating a small confidential bubble in the middle of the sleeping hospital. Her legs felt strangely heavy as she walked back to the bedside and pulled up a chair. "Ellie," she started, trying to keep her voice even and therapeutic, just like they teach you. "Can you tell me more about that? What's making you think about that tonight?" She was fully expecting a jumbled, nonsensical story that would point straight to delirium. But instead, Ellie was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on some point in the distant past. "His name was Arthur," she said, finally. "He had kind eyes. We worked together at the textile mill back in, it must have been 1973. The specificity sent a shiver right down the nurse's spine. Delusions are usually vague, populated by faceless threats. She had a name, a place, and a year. The nurse's mind was racing. What's the protocol for this? She can look up the protocol for a patient fall, a medication error, a cardiac arrest. But there's no page in the nursing manual titled "What to do when your sweet elderly patient casually confesses to a possible homicide," from 50 years ago at that. This was the unwritten part of the job, the part that's all judgment and no guidelines. "What happened with Arthur, Ellie?" she asked gently, her heart pounding against her ribs. "He was sweet on me," Ellie said, a faint, sad smile on her lips. "But I was married. I told him it wasn't right, and he wouldn't listen. He followed me home one night from the mill. It was late." She paused, her breath catching almost silently. There was a struggle. by the old stone wall on the edge of our property. He fell. He hit his head so hard. She looked down at her own hands, her gnarled knuckles, looking stark white in the dim light. I was so scared. I just ran. I never told a soul. They all said he just ran off, left town for a new job. But I knew. I always knew. The nurse just sat there completely paralyzed. Every fiber of her being wanting to say, "Oh, Ellie, it was just a bad dream." But the details, the textile mill, the stone wall, the name Arthur, it all felt terrifyingly real. Was this a memory buried for 50 years, now coming to the surface as her mind began to let go of its secrets? Or was it a story her brain had invented to explain a lifetime of guilt over something else? She had a duty. But to whom? To this fragile woman, to protect her from a police investigation that might be based on a delusion? Or to the memory of a man named Arthur who might have been a victim and not just a runaway? The weight of that decision felt like a physical pressure in the silent room. The nurse excused herself, telling Ellie she'd be right back. Her mind was a mess of ethical duties and basic human compassion. She walked into the medication room, the most private place on the floor, especially on night shift, and leaned against the cool metal of the drug cabinet, just trying to catch her breath. She could ignore it. She could just write it off as patient confused in her notes and let it go. But what if it was true? If this woman was trying to unburden her soul before she died and she just dismissed it? She couldn't live with that. She could call the police. But just imagine that scene. Cops tramping through a quiet geriatric floor in the middle of the night to question an 80-year-old woman in failing health. The chaos, the fear it would cause Ellie and the other patients, it felt cruel and premature. There had to be another way. She walked over to the charge nurse's desk. Brenda was a veteran of the night shift, a woman who had seen everything twice and was almost impossible to rattle. "Brenda," the nurse said, her voice low, "can I talk to you for a second in private?" She took one look at her face and immediately led her into the empty break room. The nurse laid it all out for her. The patient, her calmness, the name, the year, the stone wall. She watched Brenda's face, waiting for the eye roll that says, "Oh, another sundowning story." It never came. She just listened. Her expression growing more and more serious as she spoke. When the nurse finished, Brenda was quiet for a long moment, just stirring her coffee. "Okay, we're not calling the police. Not yet. First thing you do is go back in there and document everything she said, verbatim, in quotes, every detail. Then you sign it. And I'll co-sign it. In the morning, we take it to the hospital's risk management and the ethics committee. We let them guide the next steps. This is way above our pay grade, but tonight, our job is to protect our patient while we document the facts." Her clarity cut right through the nurse's panic. It was a plan, a professional, responsible plan that honored both her duty to her patient and the seriousness of what she had said. Armed with a clear plan, the nurse felt the ground solidify under her feet again. She went back to Ellie's room. Ellie was dozing, a peaceful look on her face. It was as if finally saying the words had released the tension that she'd been holding for decades. The nurse didn't wake her. Instead, she sat at the nurse's station and wrote. She wrote down every single word, just as Brenda had instructed. Arthur, the textile mill, 1973, the old stone wall. She documented Ellie's calm demeanor and her lucid state. And when she was done, Brenda read it over and co-signed without another word. The rest of the night passed in a surreal haze for her. She did her rounds, gave out meds, and filled out charts. But one part of her mind was stuck back in room 3B, caught in a black and white memory from 1973. She felt like the keeper of a profound secret, a story that wasn't hers to carry, but now was. The next morning, just as she'd promised, Brenda and the nurse met with the head of social work and someone from the ethics board. They listened with the same solemn gravity Brenda had. It was a bizarre meeting, a quiet clinical discussion about the legal and ethical maze of a 50-year-old potential crime confessed in the middle of the night. They decided the social worker, a gentlewoman named Sarah, would be the one to talk with Ellie more. Everyone agreed that bringing in law enforcement at this stage, given her frail health and the total lack of evidence, would be inappropriate and potentially harmful. The number one priority was Ellie's well-being. Over the next few days, Sarah spoke with Ellie. She was gentle and compassionate, never pushing. Ellie never wavered in her story, but she didn't offer any more details either. It was like she had said her piece and was now done. The hospital, doing a discreet inquiry of its own, found that a man named Arthur had indeed been reported as having left town, suddenly from that very same area in the fall of 1973. The case was long cold, a forgotten file in a dusty cabinet. There was no mention of a fall, no evidence of foul play. It was a dead end. We will never know for sure what happened by that stone wall 50 years ago. Was it a true confession? Or was it a delusion built around a kernel of truth? Maybe a real argument, a real fall she witnessed and felt guilty about ever since? In the end, the truth of the event became secondary to the truth of Ellie's experience. She had carried this burden, whether real or imagined, for half a century. And in the safety of a quiet hospital room with a nurse she trusted, she finally set it down. Ellie passed away peacefully about a week later. There was no police investigation, no dramatic conclusion. Her secret, whatever it was, died with her. A nurse's job description tells them to monitor vital signs, to administer medication, to chart everything. But nobody tells you that part of nursing is being the calmest person in a room where everything has become absurd. Nobody trains you on how to become the sole keeper of a 50-year-old secret. The nurse told me that night she realized the most important part of her job wasn't found in a textbook or a protocol manual. It was about listening. It was about holding the space for another human being's pain and taking them seriously even when their reality seems impossible. She said she's glad she could give her that, and in return, Ellie reminded her what it truly means to care for someone right up to the very end.